Miracles begin where the slavery of desires ends. Buddha. Before we begin, here's a small ritual. Write in the comments one word that accurately describes your current state. Sign it, and let's get started. If you are here, it means you know the weight of emptiness. You have chased success, pleasure, and endless distractions. Yet when silence surrounds you, there is still a hole inside. You have read books, listened to therapists, tried to convince yourself that everything is fine, but deep down, the truth never left. You feel drained, unfocused, unable to hold your own ground. And no matter what you try, the energy slips away, leaving you weaker each time. If you are honest with yourself, you know this has nothing to do with laziness or lack of willpower. The system has trained you to waste the very essence that could rebuild you. Scientists have spent centuries studying one of the most powerful forces inside us, sexual energy. They discovered that this energy is not just about reproduction or desire. It is the raw material of focus, creativity, imagination, and power. Every ancient tradition knew it. Yogis, monks, philosophers, warriors, they all spoke of the same truth. If you can contain this energy, if you can stop wasting it mindlessly, it will awaken abilities you never thought possible. Modern research has confirmed what the ancients whispered in secret. The nervous system, the brain, the body, all are transformed when this energy is preserved. Think about the times you felt the strongest, most alive, most connected to something beyond the ordinary. That intensity was a glimpse of what happens when sexual energy is not thrown away, but held inside. Scientists have measured higher levels of testosterone, increased dopamine sensitivity, sharper concentration, and even improved memory during periods of abstinence. They found that the same energy used for release can instead fuel the brain's ability to imagine, to create, to solve, to achieve. It is the difference between scattering sparks into the dark and forging them into fire. For thousands of years, hidden schools taught their disciples that sexual restraint was the doorway to mastery. Not because they wanted to deny pleasure, but because they understood that pleasure alone was a trap. They knew that when energy is saved, it rises, moving upward through the body, unlocking clarity, discipline, and resilience. What modern society calls repression, they called transformation. And this transformation is what the modern world has stolen from you by keeping you trapped in constant release. If you feel broken, it is not because you are weak. It is because you have been bleeding your power without even knowing it. You have been trained to trade the most concentrated energy you possess for a few fleeting seconds of relief. And the price has been enormous. Lost drive, dulled imagination, lack of focus, constant fatigue. What scientists discovered, and what the ancients always knew, is that the moment you stop this cycle, your mind begins to rebuild. Your body regains vitality. Your vision clears. You no longer stumble through life half asleep. You begin to remember who you are. If these words resonate with you, if you feel the truth echoing inside, subscribe to this channel. Let this message spread to others who are ready to reclaim their hidden strength. Join the community on Telegram, where more practices and insights await that cannot be shared here. And if you want to go deeper, support this channel as a sponsor, so we can uncover even more of the knowledge kept hidden from you. This is not just content, it is a movement for those who refuse to keep wasting their power. Most people have been deceived into believing that the constant release of sexual energy is harmless or even healthy. Society repeats the idea that satisfaction equals freedom, that following every impulse will make you whole. But if that were true, then why is there so much exhaustion, emptiness, and frustration in a world overflowing with pleasure? Why do people who endlessly chase desire often feel the most drained and lost? The illusion is simple. Keep people addicted to release, and they will never rise above survival. The truth is that what feels like freedom is actually a cage, a system that steals focus, drive, and vision from the inside out. Modern psychology often avoids this subject because it is uncomfortable. Therapists focus on coping mechanisms, positive affirmations, and quick fixes while ignoring the raw energy that shapes human behavior at its root. Self-help books tell you to think positive or raise your vibration, but they never ask what happens when the deepest source of your power leaks out every week, every day, sometimes every hour. You can repeat affirmations forever, but if your core energy is wasted, no thought will ever stick. This is why so many feel like they are doing everything right, yet remain stuck in the same patterns. It is not your fault. It is the design of the system around you. Scientists studying sexual energy have found that constant release lowers testosterone, diminishes dopamine sensitivity, and weakens the reward pathways in the brain. In plain words, this means less motivation, less focus, less capacity to feel joy in everyday life. The more you give in, the harder it becomes to find satisfaction anywhere else. It creates a cycle of dependency, where you need more stimulation for less fulfillment. And this is exactly why millions feel trapped in cycles of procrastination, lack of creativity, and an inability to build lasting discipline. The brain is not broken. It is starved of the very fuel that makes it work at full capacity. The ancients understood this long before laboratories proved it. Monks in Asia, Stoic philosophers in Greece, sages in India, they all spoke of conserving the vital essence. They noticed that men who wasted it too often grew weak, distracted, and restless, while those who preserved it developed focus, charisma, and inner strength. They created entire systems of training to redirect the energy upward, transforming desire into insight, clarity, and vision. What was once considered sacred knowledge has been buried under modern myths about freedom and self-expression, yet the evidence has never disappeared. The harsh truth is that most people live at only a fraction of their potential because their strongest energy is drained before it can ever transform into something higher. This is not about morality, religion, or shame. It is about power. Every time you preserve this force, you are choosing to store the most concentrated form of life energy within you. Every time you waste it, you scatter the fire that could have forged resilience, creativity, and determination. Scientists confirm it, history confirms it, and deep inside, you already feel the truth. The system will never tell you this because a society of focused, disciplined individuals cannot be controlled. That is why it is hidden, mocked, and ignored. But if you are still listening, it means you are ready to see through the illusion and claim what has always been yours. Scientists across different fields have discovered that sexual restraint does not simply stop desire, it transforms it. When the body holds back release, a chain of biological changes begins. Testosterone levels rise, sometimes by more than half, after only a week of abstinence, creating a surge in vitality and drive. Dopamine receptors in the brain become more sensitive, meaning that focus, motivation, and clarity increase instead of fading into dullness. Neurotransmitters linked with creativity and problem-solving fire more effectively, allowing ideas to form with more strength and originality. In practical terms, This means you can work longer without burning out, think deeper without distraction, and generate solutions that would never appear in a state of constant depletion. Studies show that athletes who practice periods of abstinence often perform with greater endurance, faster recovery, and sharper reaction times. The same principle applies to intellectual work. Writers, scientists, and inventors throughout history have linked their bursts of creativity with phases of sexual restraint. By conserving the life force, the nervous system channels energy into concentration and imagination rather than scattering it through endless impulses. This is why many of the greatest thinkers were known for discipline, not indulgence. Their minds were sharpened because they understood, consciously or unconsciously, that the body fuels the brain when energy is preserved. Focus is one of the first abilities people notice when they stop wasting energy. Suddenly, tasks that once felt impossible become clear and manageable. The fog lifts, procrastination weakens, and a new strength of will emerges. This is not mystical. It is the direct effect of the nervous system functioning at full capacity. Productivity rises because the brain is no longer numbed by overstimulation. Instead of needing constant novelty and entertainment, the mind finds satisfaction in progress, achievement, and creation. Work becomes deeper, attention becomes steadier, and the results speak for themselves. Imagination is another gift that awakens. The same energy that could create life, when not released, begins to generate visions, concepts, and ideas. Many people describe sudden flashes of insight, entire solutions appearing fully formed, or a surge of artistic inspiration. Neurologists explain this as the redirection of energy toward the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for complex thought, decision-making, and creativity. What was once spent in seconds becomes available to fuel breakthroughs that can change a life or even the world. This is why abstinence has been associated with innovation and artistic genius throughout cultures and centuries. The pattern is clear. Restraint builds power, while excess weakens it. When sexual energy is preserved, it feeds strength, endurance, clarity, creativity, and resilience. When it is constantly released, it leaves behind emptiness, distraction, and fatigue. Science confirms what ancient traditions always taught. The choice is not about morality, but about direction. Either the fire burns aimlessly and vanishes, or it is forged into a force that makes you unstoppable. And once you taste the clarity, the focus, and the imagination that rise from restraint, it becomes impossible to deny that this is the path to abilities most people will never access. Carl Jung once wrote that what we repress does not disappear, it gathers strength in the unconscious until it forces its way back into our lives. Sexual energy is the most powerful example of this principle. When wasted mindlessly, it never has the chance to rise and transform. But when it is preserved, it meets the shadow within, forcing a confrontation with everything we have denied or avoided. This is why the path of restraint is not only about biology, but about psychology at the deepest level. It awakens the inner critic, the hidden fears, the unresolved wounds. Instead of destroying you, this confrontation becomes the beginning of true strength, because the same energy that once enslaved you now becomes a mirror showing who you really are. Sigmund Freud described libido as the core driver of human behavior, the foundation of creativity, ambition, and even civilization itself. What he called sublimation is simply the redirection of sexual energy into art, work, or achievement. Modern research supports this view. When impulses are not acted out immediately, the brain learns to channel them into higher functions. This is why restraint often brings a surge of discipline, resilience, and vision. It is not that desire disappears, it becomes fuel for something greater. The very tension that once felt unbearable transforms into determination, the raw pressure pushing you forward when others give up. Ancient teachings echo the same truth. Taoist masters spoke of transforming Jing, the vital essence, into Qi, the life force, and eventually into Shen, the spirit. Indian yogis described brahmacharya as the practice of conserving sexual energy to awaken higher states of consciousness. Monastic traditions across Christianity, Buddhism, and other paths emphasized celibacy not as denial, but as a gateway to clarity and spiritual authority. These traditions understood that energy has direction. If wasted, it weakens the body and clouds the mind. But if conserved, it lifts awareness and strengthens will. What modern science measures in hormones and neurotransmitters, the ancients saw in the light of inner transformation. The effects on concentration are undeniable. People who practice restraint report a heightened ability to stay present, to engage deeply with tasks, and to resist distractions that once consumed them. This is not simply willpower, but the natural sharpening of the nervous system. By holding energy, you are literally rewiring the brain to focus, to endure, and to create. At the same time, the imagination expands, sometimes explosively. The tension that could have been released outward is redirected inward, igniting visions, insights, and intuitive leaps. Artists, inventors, and leaders across history credited periods of abstinence for their breakthroughs, whether they admitted it openly or kept it hidden. But there is another side that most avoid speaking of. Restraint forces you to meet the parts of yourself you would rather escape. The shadow surfaces: frustration, anger, fear, shame. This is where the real work begins. If you simply fight or repress these feelings, you create even more tension. But if you face them, breathe through them, and integrate them, the energy becomes clean, powerful, and transformative. Jung called this integration the process of individuation, the uniting of conscious and unconscious into wholeness. Sexual restraint is one of the fastest and most intense ways to walk this path, because it touches the very core of human desire and survival. It is not easy, but it is real. And what emerges on the other side is not just control, but freedom. The kind of freedom that cannot be given or taken, only earned. When energy is preserved instead of wasted, it becomes available to fuel every area of life. Scientists studying brain chemistry show that during periods of abstinence, dopamine cycles reset, meaning that motivation is no longer hijacked by constant cravings for instant pleasure. This shift creates a natural drive to pursue long-term goals, to complete difficult tasks, and to sustain effort, where before there was only distraction. The same man who once struggled to focus for minutes can now work for hours without breaking flow, not because he forced discipline, but because his nervous system was finally restored to its natural state. This is why so many people describe a sudden rise in productivity when they commit to restraint. Athletes and warriors throughout history have used abstinence as preparation for battle and competition. Modern studies confirm that testosterone peaks during controlled periods of sexual restraint, creating a surge of physical energy, aggression, and resilience. Muscles recover faster, endurance rises, and the body responds more powerfully to training. But this physical benefit is only one side. On the mental level, restraint creates emotional steadiness. Instead of riding the roller coaster of desire and release, the mind finds balance. Stress is reduced, patience increases, and emotional intelligence grows. The result is a person who can remain calm under pressure, yet explosive when necessary, a combination that defines mastery in any field. Creativity is another dimension that expands when energy is preserved. Neuroscience shows that sexual tension stimulates the same neural circuits responsible for imagination and problem-solving. What would have been released in seconds becomes the fire behind innovation and artistry. Painters, writers, and inventors often entered phases of extraordinary productivity after practicing periods of abstinence. Their visions became sharper, their ideas bolder, their capacity to create unshakable. This is why many traditions considered restraint a form of sacred practice, because it unlocked the imagination that builds civilizations. Without this transformation, desire remains only a cycle of repetition. With it, desire becomes the source of genius. The ancients built entire systems around this truth. In Taoist practice, men learned to circulate energy through breathing and visualization, allowing the force of desire to rise up the spine and nourish the brain. In yogic systems, energy preserved through brahmacharya was said to awaken kundalini, leading to expanded awareness and even mystical experiences. These teachings were not superstition, they were observations of what happens when the strongest human energy is no longer wasted but refined. Today, science speaks of neurotransmitters and hormones, while the ancients spoke of life force and spirit. Both point to the same conclusion: restraint transforms potential into power. The practical impact is undeniable. Work becomes more consistent, ideas come more freely, and the ability to endure hardship grows. Instead of collapsing under stress, the individual rises with it. Instead of feeling drained by routine, he feels fueled by purpose. This is the essence of transformation: to stop scattering life force outward and begin using it to shape destiny. And while society hides this truth under layers of distraction and addiction, those who rediscover it step into an entirely different path. They do not need constant stimulation because they carry a reservoir of energy within. This is why restraint is not about denial, but about direction, about choosing to let the strongest force inside you build rather than destroy. Restraint is meaningless if it remains only an idea. The real transformation begins with practice, with small, daily actions that redirect energy instead of letting it escape. Scientists explain that when desire arises, the brain releases dopamine, creating the urge for release. But if you resist and simply observe, the brain slowly adapts, rewiring the reward system. Over time, the craving loses power, and the same energy that once demanded escape becomes available for focus, discipline, and creation. This is why the first days or weeks feel difficult, because the brain is adjusting. Once you cross that threshold, the energy no longer controls you. You control it. One of the most effective techniques is awareness. Instead of reacting to impulses with shame or repression, you witness them. You feel the tension in the body, the restlessness in the mind, and you breathe through it. This teaches the nervous system to hold pressure without breaking. Over time, this builds an inner resilience that applies to every challenge in life. Another practice is physical redirection. Exercise, deep breathing, and cold exposure all help move the energy upward rather than letting it stagnate. Scientists have shown that physical activity raises endorphins and serotonin, which replace the craving with a state of calm clarity. It is not suppression, it is transformation. Journaling is another powerful tool. By writing down the triggers, the moments of weakness, and the emotions beneath them, you begin to see patterns that were hidden before. Often what feels like desire is actually stress, loneliness, or unresolved pain. By naming it, you take away its secret power. Carl Jung emphasized that making the unconscious conscious is the path to individuation. In the context of restraint, this means seeing desire not as an enemy, but as a signal pointing to deeper wounds. When you face those wounds, the urge begins to lose its grip, and the energy behind it becomes clean fuel for growth. Meditation is equally important. When you sit in silence and watch the rise and fall of thoughts without chasing them, you strengthen the same muscles of attention that help you hold energy. Studies show that meditation increases gray matter in regions of the brain responsible for focus and emotional regulation. Combined with restraint, it becomes a multiplier of clarity. Where once the mind was scattered and restless, it now becomes sharp, steady, and creative. This is how sexual energy transforms into concentration and vision, through stillness, patience, and awareness. The key is not to turn restraint into another form of obsession. If you make it about numbers, days, or competition, you trap yourself in the same cycle of pressure. The purpose is not to fight desire, but to integrate it, to redirect it toward what builds you. Real freedom is not in avoiding impulses, but in using them. When you feel the surge of energy, you channel it into work, art, training, or learning. Instead of losing strength, you multiply it. This is why restraint, when practiced with awareness, becomes a source of discipline, creativity, and resilience that no quick pleasure can ever replace. It is not about running from desire. It is about mastering it so that it serves you instead of ruling you. Remember this: sexual restraint is not profitable for the system. The culture repeats the mantra of endless freedom and constant indulgence because a drained person is easy to control. When you spend your strongest energy again and again, what remains inside is exhaustion, emptiness, and passivity. Desire sold as liberation is in truth a tool of control. Each release leaves you with less focus, less drive, less initiative, until nothing remains but weakness. Society that wastes its vital force becomes lazy, distracted, and dependent. That is why this message is everywhere, because it serves those in power. The truth is simple. Preserved energy rebuilds your mind, your body, and your will. Wasted energy dissolves them. The choice is yours, and the outcome defines your future. If these words resonate with you, subscribe to the channel. That way, more people will hear the truth that has been hidden from them. Join the Telegram community for practices and insights that cannot be shared openly, and consider becoming a sponsor to support the uncovering of deeper knowledge. If you recognized yourself in these words, write in the comments, "I no longer run from pain." If you feel it is time to face your shadow, write, "My darkness is my strength." If you are ready to stop playing roles, write, "I remove the masks." And if this video has changed something within you, write, "I accept my shadow as a commitment to yourself."